What's going on? How was your trading today? Was it amazing? Mine was too. Yeah, so today we had one of the typical Bitcoin hiccups, right? It happens. It sneezes the wrong way and everybody freaks out, okay? But that's to be expected, right? So we know what we're getting. I wanted to talk about a few things today. I had to work, but I was thinking about crypto the whole time and some stuff that I did want to share. So not really sure exactly what news made it skip. We thought maybe it was the Peter Thiel news or whatever, but it doesn't matter. It happens all the time. For whatever reason, Bitcoin gets all uppity and things change. So let's get into some of this. These aren't bad times. These are, if you're configured correctly or your strategy is good, these are times when you make the money. You make a ton of bags if you're aggressively trading. I bagged up beautifully. I'll show you that too. But I do that knowing that it's going to happen. You factor that into that specific type of strategy. So I wanted to show you a couple things. And it's all about the timing and about what tools like ProfitTrailer and the ProfitTrailer feeder have built in to be able to combat this a little bit. So it's all about the timing, right? So here's Bitcoin and the dollar off of Bitstamp. It doesn't matter what exchange; they're all going to be relatively close. And trading's pretty normal. I'm on 15-minute candles, and you're boom, 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 whatever. It doesn't really change much until right here. Okay, and that's the 1800 mark. So if I wanted to know how this affected everything else, I can look at this and go, okay, that's 1800. I got some charts I pulled up. So here's Ripple right there at 1815. Here it is at 1800. It hasn't really done much yet. 1815 starts to change a little bit. Whoops, not that one. I didn't pull up the other ones. These just show the crossover. So you've got your two lines, and your alt in Bitcoin went down as the price of Bitcoin and dollars went up. I've talked about this before, but it's pretty basic, but it helps to look at it and go, oh, yeah, okay, duh. The difference is that alts tend to overreact to a market change. In an ideal world, if everything was completely equal, if Bitcoin went up 10% in dollars, in that same amount of time, your alts priced in Bitcoin should go down 10% back to dollars. But what we see is a almost like a rubber band effect. If Bitcoin goes up 10%, alts will drop 25, okay? And then eventually come back to parity. And that's kind of what we're seeing now. So Bitcoin showing a 9% difference. Earlier it was much bigger. I think it was like 15%. My alts were the DCA tab. This was much worse. This was showing close to 25% down. So if you're just holding, okay, there's not much you can do. But back in the day when we used a different bot, and honestly, ProfitTrailer would be perfect for this as well. It follows some of the same principles. You can have a bot sitting there doing nothing, essentially just waiting with like a Bitcoin or whatever. Let's say a Bitcoin is your entire stack. You may take this other bot and give it 0.2 Bitcoin or something. And all it wants to do is just sit there and wait for the market to drop. And wait for the market to drop massively, like we just saw. Because typically what happens is these things go way down and then correct almost immediately. This pattern here, I could pull up 100 charts. Well, I don't know 100, but I can pull up a bunch of charts, and they're all going to follow exactly this. When there's a deep spike like this, if you look at the time here, so that's 1815. That's 15 minutes after the Bitcoin move here. And incidentally, let's look at what that is in percentage. So I cheat because I'm terrible with math. I go to a profit. Whoa, I can't do that. Profit percent. I go to the percentage calculator, and I say, okay, well, I pull up the price and I say, I look at the open to close, or the high to low. So in this case, I'm looking right there at the bottom. It's 13,878, let's say. 13,878. And we're going to come up to the top of that candle, which it's right about there. We'll say it's 14,185. 185. Okay. That's 2.21%. So had you had a setting where you said if my Bitcoin changing is 2%, then you could have anticipated the spike and had all your stuff shut off. And what you would have done is you would not have traded into any of that nonsense. You wouldn't have traded into this. You just stopped here in this area, and then when things fluctuate, kind of even back out, you can get back in. So that's a protection of sorts. That's cool. You may just want to now, hey, I'm out. I don't want to trade that. You can also, with that specific bot I was telling you about, let's say all it was doing was waiting for these massive drops. So what drop is this in percentage? We're going to go from, we'll say the normalcy stopped around here. We can go from, let's say the top of that candle. So we'll do the top of the 15 candle, which is 15,428. 15,428, and we went all the way down to, look at the bottom of that wick. Now you're not going to hit those. Typically, like ProfitTrailer is pretty kick-ass, dude, but you never assume you're going to get the bottom of those wicks. That's the luckiest person today in that trade. So we'll look at the percentage, but assume it's going to be a little bit less. So that's 13,080. 13,080. Okay, calculate that. That's a 15% drop. So the recovery, though, and that's pretty good. Now, you could detect and be waiting for a 10% drop. So in gain speak, that's I'd say a 12% would catch that nicely. In Bollinger Bands, how do I do that on here? Whoops. Where's my Bollinger Bands? I haven't used this in a while. Bollinger, where is it? Where do I go? Is it over here? I don't know. Bollinger Bands. Well. All right, well, doesn't matter. Your Bollinger Bands would show you this too. So, but you can recover. So let's look at the gain difference. So we're coming from here. That's a 13,080. And we've recovered easily up to 14,985. So 14,985, and the bottom was what was it? It was 13,080. Okay, 15%. So you see that? That's a 15% swing from the bottom to the recovery. That's huge money. So if you have a bot configured to do just that, you can throw your max cost could be 25% of your stack, because you know that pattern, when it happens, repeats. Sometimes it's a fake out. You know what? Maybe later on this is going to come and start trailing back down. Probably not. It's probably going to try to come back up to exactly where it left off, because this was just a market freak out. And that's why a lot of times just holding is fine. We haven't entered a real bear trend yet. We've only had a momentary spike. So there's that. So how would this look when we're talking about ProfitTrailer feeder? Let's take a look. No, not that one. Well, we can start with that one. So there's been some misconceptions about it, or maybe I didn't describe things as well as I could have. The main ability that ProfitTrailer feeder brings in is the flexibility of these different markets. So you can define yourself what market you're in with your own parameters and make the bot do things based on those parameters or those markets. ProfitTrailer does that already. I mean, to some extent. It's pretty good at it. You can still look at Bitcoin and make your decisions based on that, but it's limited to a narrower scope. Ideally, you can come up with your own strategy, implement it in PTF, and it's going to do exactly what it's supposed to do. The configs that we let out for this beta testing and for this this soft rollout, those are conservative by default. Why? Well, because I don't want people losing their money. I know people have tried it and they said, well, I'm not getting too many results. It's kind of slow. Yes, it's kind of slow. But all it's doing is making a new pairs file with comments telling you why it's doing what it's doing. If you go through your pairs, you're going to see a lot of them are set to sell-only mode, or the offsets have stacked in a certain way that when you do get into it, that particular coin might not be accepting as much money because it's been graded lower than the higher grades. All of that's configurable, but it takes work to look at your results and then go, okay, well, how do I change this to make it something different? Pro tip, you can run ProfitTrailer Feeder against a test installation, look at your output pairs file, and see if it makes sense. You don't actually have to trade on that. You can just look at it and go, okay, well, I like this, or I see a lot of sell-only modes, or I see not too many sell-only modes. Some people have wildly different risk profiles than you do, or I do. My stuff today was extremely greedy, but again, I knew that's what I was doing. So if I'm pulling 5, 6, 7% a day in a great market, okay, well, I know when I bag up, it's going to be a big loss, but I can afford that loss as long as I had a few days of good performance. So let's dig in a couple of things here. I wanted to talk about some stuff I didn't cover earlier. Let's go to the other file here. Let's jump down to this section down here. So I discussed this before, but let's go over it again. Everything in here is a grouping, and all of the groupings stack. So for your market conditions, you're always going to be in one of these markets, and then that's determined by default, it's this max top coin average change. If it starts with max top coin, it's talking about the alts. It's talking about the line here, this top currencies to check. If it's min base price coin change, that is your base. If it's F, if it's Bitcoin, whatever, this is, if this changes, okay, well then now you're in this market. If they're both in there, that's an either or condition. This or that. It's probably cool just to go with just one. You always want to start out simple and then work your way up to more complex stuff. But if there's two, there's an implied or there, and everything in this stack goes in order. It's boom, 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 boom. They all stack up, and you end up with a final amount. If it's plus 15 and minus 10, you're plus 5. Okay, all the way down the line. So you're in a market, and it's doing stuff. Every coin has a price, and it's either going to fall into this grouping or not. Every coin has a volume. It's going to fall into one of these categories or not. The price trend change, same thing. All of these stack up. Okay. Now it gets kind of confusing, and I get it. Like, we're working on a calculator that's going to help that. I can do that in a Google spreadsheet. Colin's working on an app. We'd like to do that visually. You can play around with your settings and the sliders and get a variable output that says, look, if I'm in this market, this coin's going to look like this. And what are my stacked offsets as you tinker around, so you don't have to go back and do it, wait for everything to calculate, and then come back and look at your pairs file. You always want to do that in the end, but you don't have to as you're tinkering. Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about was these two guys here. We've got, where am I at? Price trend change. Okay, so that would be for your alts. So if the alts are doing these things, you're in one of these groups. Okay. Yeah. So We can dig more into those later. I don't really care about that. Longer price change grouping. That's what we were talking about before. We're saying what's the longer window. In this case, we're looking at 20 minutes in the longer term trend, or 20 minutes, 720 minutes, okay, in the longer term trend. So that translates to 720 minutes of bars in your chart. And you're looking at the average across all of those bars, okay? And you're looking for that post pump. Now in this case, this is a great trading, set. I mean, if you look at these numbers, that's great. You get all kinds of oscillations there. Percentage wise, it's not bad. It's you're going between 13.8 and 15.8. That's pretty good. Trading Ripple, you could be trading just Ripple and be doing great, But what we're talking about today is the bag situation that happened when Bitcoin triggered. PTF would have avoided that, and honestly, PT probably would have too. It's just that PTF could allow you to continue to trade in some of this. You could say, look, if this has happened, I still want to trade, but I want to make all my offsets lower. I want to make my entries lower, and I want to be safer about the buys. Maybe you want to DCA at the bottom. Maybe you want to say, look, I'm ready to start trading down here again because you want to DCA your stuff. DCAing, all that's doing is it's fixing a bad entry. It's not magic. If you have to DCA, it's because your original entry sucked. But when we're working with bots, that's all we can do, right? You're gonna have the bad entries. DCA is the best way to deal with it. But in a perfect world, you would enter and the price goes up and you exit, right? It's only dangerous in an extremely bear market. I will pull up. Let me pause this. I'm going to pull up the other numbers I have, and we'll look at the way those settings are and how they could be better. Okay. All right, we're back. I pulled up some different things, and I was trying to find an easy way to describe some of these differences between raw PT and the new ProfitTrailer feeder. Okay, so looking through some of the bags that I had, the first one I came up with was this SONM, and that guy's living somewhere right there. Okay, so I don't know why I picked that one, just random. And I was looking at this account still runs pure PT. Why? Well, two parts. One, extreme laziness. Two, the markets were so good and this thing was pulling in money, I was loath to change it. My plan was just to make another account and really try to tweak ProfitTrailer feeder with an aggressive stance and still have the failbacks that we need in order to try to avoid some of these situations. Again, I knew it was happening. I knew it was coming. Just a matter of when. Luckily, this one wasn't terrible. We've gone through ones in past months where you just gotta, you look at it, you're waiting, you're like, okay, it's gonna come back, and it doesn't. And just okay. But anyway, so let's look here. Okay, so here's some of the existing settings for that particular config. Doing EMA spread and doing a negative 0.99. So most of you know what that means. It means you draw two EMA lines, and if the spread between them meets or exceeds that criteria, buy. And I can show you on this chart here. So that buy I looked up, it's on here. The first buy was at 29.42 at 8.23, and in here we can go to I have it on the same config. So if you look at my indicators, these are defaults. So again, these are tweakable. You can put these whatever you want. 30-minute candles are nice because it gives you a broader view of what's going on. But we're looking at 30-minute candles with the long EMA being 20 candles long and the EMA 2, the short EMA being 5 candles long. I used to use the 24.3 that I thought about a while back. That one works pretty well too. A lot of times what you want to do is you want to trail the current price as close as you can and have a longer average to compare it to. But 25, that works pretty well. And so, yeah, so 99. And if you look at the 823 line, right around in here. So it triggered down in here somewhere, and it was long enough to buy. And of course, it just kept going. It actually bought before this nastiness. But I sure as heck would have, had I not been in that pair already, right around here, it probably would have just bought anyway, and I'd still have the same kind of bag. I believe it's DCA'd a couple times since then. Yeah, you can look. It's bought a few times, so I'm averaged in a little bit. So how would I make that better? It's pretty simple. You just want to have those checks in place. I didn't have any check to see what market I'm in. Didn't care. Did buy. One of the main differences with the PTF is being able to define a time range. And that, if you look here in, where am I at? Okay. So the Bitcoin price drops and triggers, these all use 24-hour price, and that's built into PTF or into PT. PTF has that definable. Okay? Your trend can be measured in any amount of minutes you want. Now, those are 5-minute candles, but you can define your own pricing windows for what you want to look at. So that's one piece that people might not realize when they just set this up by default and they're used to using just PT. This has a lot of configurable options, and it's this crazy dance, and everything's interconnected. There is no graphical way to do that right now. You just kind of got to look at it, use your logical side of your brain, and figure that out. The best way I found to do that is to let it run, make a configuration file, make a pairs file, and look at it and go, okay, and then you trade on it. And if the trades aren't doing what you're used to or not what you're expecting, well, then you go back, you look at your logs, you look at this, and you start tweaking. This product right now isn't a plug-and-play kind of thing. It is for power users. It is for people who, like me, who love knobs. Give me knobs. I like to twiddle, I like to change things, and I like to see outputs. Eventually, we should eventually have some kind of a config that's good for everybody, some kind of a base that says, hey, look, are you aggressive? Use this. Are you a pansy? Use this. Well, but you know what I mean. So that's the goal. We're just not there yet, right? So we're building the community. People are going to start sharing stuff if they like. I know I like to show off if I did something really good. Hey, check it out, So there's that. What else? The DCAs. So I've adjusted the DCAs in this one too. This is not good for most markets. It's good for a hot market because I'm assuming that if it drops, I want to DCA that thing quickly 3 times, and those stack too. So if it's in Anderson, if you drop 1.8. It's got to be 2.5 from the last buy, not from the overall drop. We're looking at it's consecutive. It's 1.8, and then 2.5 from there, and then 3.5 from there. So those aren't representative of a 3.5% drop overall. That's 3.5% from whatever price that was. And again, a DCA calculator could show us that. We can make a spreadsheet that kind of lets you put some prices in. And you can then see how much money you have, how much it would take to DCA, how fast, and ideally make an overall way to better manage your stack and not get everything eaten up by the DCAs. So again, in PTF world, you can have these in multiple markets. If I'm in a bear market, if I've determined here's what I think a bear market looks like, I don't want DCAs like this. I want my first DCA to be like 5 because I'm assuming that things are tanking harder. So I don't want to be 3 DCAs in by the time the thing has dropped 5, 6, 7%. And I don't want to have to babysit the thing to do it. I want the bot to know what market I'm in and know what DCAs to apply. These all live in each individual folder. So if you look in the PTF config, you'll see the 5 different folders for the default markets. You can change these files. Those get written every time the market changes. So you can say, eventually we might make those dynamic too. But these are your base, and then in the applications in here, you can still modify it with offset stacks. So there's that. Hopefully that explained a little bit more of that. One last thing I'm going to talk about, and I'm probably going to pause it again, is we're going to talk about his newer thing. Where is that at? The trailing DCA. Where is that at? I don't know. I'll find it in a minute. But yeah, so I'm going to go over this last thing. I'm going to try to make that a little visual for you, and hopefully, I haven't talked your ear off, and you've gotten something from it. All right? Be back in a minute. All right, cool. I looked up some numbers, and what I was trying to talk about before was this automatic adjustments to your trailing values, your trailing buy and your trailing sell. I knew about it after I talked to Chirag. It's actually a lot cooler than I thought, so I want to share it with you. So looking at this guy, the only thing I'm not sure absolutely right now is the timing window, and I can amend this video with a notation or whatever. But we need to know what time frame we're looking at. I think what we're looking at is the minutes to measure trend. That's the only thing that makes any sense. Could be wrong, but I'm going to go right now. We're going to go and use that. If it's wrong, we'll fix it. Anyway, so what I have here is Ripple, and we're looking at 5-minute candles. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And so that's going to give us our 1 hour of window that we've defined in our config. And I've put the code that he's using to do this calculation. So you can see the variables. It's pretty simple. Anybody who's doing any programming can look at this and understand it, but we'll go through it. Every single candle, if you don't know, let's pretend like you don't know what a candle is. We'll talk about it right now. Every single candle is a container of prices. So in this 5-minute period, this defines the activity that we've had. You've got an open and a close and a high and a low, the OHLC. When you do an API call, that's the data that typically comes back is those 4 numbers. And they're visually represented here. So if you look at this candle, it's red, which means it closed lower than it opened. So it opened here, right here at the top of that candle, and it closed here. But during that 5 minutes period of time, the actual price activity was the wick to wick. So this is a candle. These are wicks, a top and a bottom wick. So the top of the wick is your high, and the bottom of the wick is your low. And then you get your open and your close. Okay, so knowing that, we take the high of the candle up here. So for the trailing buy, let's say we're trying to figure out a trailing buy. So we're going to go from where it opened to where it stopped, the very bottom, this low, and divide it by the open times 100. And what that does is it gives us a percentage. So what we're looking at is the percentage of price fluctuation within that candle period, which is kind of what you want to know if you're talking about how low you want to go. Like a perfect sell is going to be down here somewhere, not up here. So you can define that statically, or you can let ProfitTrailer Feeder look at your past candles and try to figure that out for you and make an adjustment based on previous price activity. Is the past a prediction of the future? No. But that's all we have to go on. So we have to look at the past to kind of guess at what the future might hold. So let's go out of here and pull up that calendar. There it is. Okay. So here's the calculator on that. So I showed the math. So for that particular candle, I think it was that candle, we're at 1.5%. And then he takes all of the candles' values. So this is 1.5. The next one's going to have a different percentage. He takes all of those percentages and then divides it by 2, which gives you the average across that time. whether it's buy side or sell side. And that gives you this number that dynamically adjusts your trail. So that's new. I haven't tested it yet. I'm going to. I'm sure many people are. And I'd love to share some of those results with you. So I think that's it for now. I think I talked enough. If you got any questions, leave comments in the video. Find us in Discord. We'd love to talk. All right. Till next time, we'll talk to you later.